Scary Unsolved Cases, Part 1. In 1970, a mysterious woman was found burned to death in Ice Valley, Norway. We don't know who she is, and it looked like whoever killed her didn't want us to find out. All of the tags were cut out of her clothes and belongings, and any distinctive marks were scraped off. What's also weird is that police found a number of disguises like wigs and various passports with her, and a letter that was written in code. So people assume maybe she was a secret spy. If you want to learn more about this case, I just covered it in my YouTube video, link in bio.
You can only play this free game if you have a friend. In Unsolved Case, you must work together with a friend to solve puzzles in order to catch a cryptic killer. It's perfect for friends that game together or for long-distance date nights. You just need to be able to hear each other. So tag a friend that you want to play with because...
So let's talk about what this monster did to become the youngest woman ever put on death row. So on the morning of January 13th, 1995, 19-year-old Colleen Slemmer was found brutally murdered in Knoxville, Tennessee. Colleen had been brutally murdered by having her head smashed in with a concrete block after suffering almost an hour of torture, which included having a pentagram carved into her chest while she was still alive. Now, Krista was quickly caught a few days later because she actually took a piece of Colleen's skull and kept it as a souvenir and was going around showing all of her friends and bragging about the murder. Now, it was soon discovered that Krista had actually murdered Colleen along with her boyfriend because Krista was jealous and thought that Colleen was trying to steal her boyfriend away from her, even though that was not true in the slightest. Krista was just 19 years old when she was found guilty and sentenced to death, and she is currently still sitting on death row awaiting her execution.
This is the disappearance of Kevin McAllister. On December 22nd, 1990, the McAllister family of Chicago, Illinois packed themselves up for a vacation to Miami, Florida. A vacation that Father Peter McAllister was somehow able to afford as a day trader in Chicago? The suitcases were packed, the alarms were set, and the Pepsi was taken easy on, so that Cousin Fuller did not wet the bed. Go easy, little buddy. On December 23rd at 8:40 a.m., the McAllisters headed to the airport. What Mother Kate McAllister did not realize was that she would prove to be what the French call les incompetents. They left their son Kevin at home, alone. When the plane landed, Kate phoned police and a welfare check was conducted at the home, but it was reported to the family that Kevin was missing. That's when Kate McAllister left her family in Miami and headed back to Chicago to locate her son. Little did she know she'd never make it, and she was last seen at an airport in Scranton, PA. Kate was last seen with this mysterious group of men, all carrying tubas. She was never seen again. The only clues left behind were this bucket of paint, a broken picture of Buzz's girlfriend, Wolf, and traces of flesh on the floor, supposedly belonging to a bald head. So what do you think happened to Kevin McAllister? Was it the Wet Bandits, who were charged with criminal robbery and aggravated water damage on the same night of his disappearance? Do you think it could have been a local pizza delivery driver who got stiffed by Kevin and sought revenge on the little brat? Keep the change, you filthy animal. What about the spooky neighbor who had an estranged relationship with his son? Were we supposed to care about this plot point? What happened to Mrs. McAllister? And who are these large men? Is she in the tuba? Or is it something else?
This is actually the unsolved true crime that makes me super paranoid in hotels now. So enjoy, guys. On Wednesday, January 2nd in 1935, so a little while ago, Roland T. Owen checked into a hotel in Kansas City, aka room 1046. Don't really know much about him. He showed up with a nice black coat and he checked into the hotel. The bellboy took him to his room and he said that he didn't even have luggage. He only had a toothbrush, comb, and what he had on him. So it seemed like it was kind of like a day trip, maybe. Then a maid came in to clean his room, but he said, "Don't lock the door on your way out. I have friends coming." But while she was cleaning his room, he was sitting on the bed, fully dressed, but had the room completely dark, even the blinds closed except one lamp in the corner of the room, which is like kind of weird. I don't understand how you even like clean a hotel room, but she was just doing her job. She came back to give him towels and he was still dressed and in the dark, sitting on the bed. I don't know. I don't understand why he's not moving. But on the way out, after she dropped off the towels, she realized that on the table, there was a note that said, "Don, I will be back in 15 minutes. Wait." Next day, the maid came in, door was locked, but from the outside. I didn't realize that some hotels back in the day, you could lock from the outside. I don't know why, but they did. Architect or engineer or whatever you need to be to figure that out. So she was like, oh, okay, he probably left and locked the door, because it also had like a do not disturb sign on, but whatever. She went in because she got to clean the room, and to her surprise, he was in the room and he was still sitting on the bed fully dressed. So I'm like, is this man paralyzed? Like, what is he doing? Is he meditating? It's just weird. I don't know. And then, as you can probably conclude, someone locked him in the room. We don't really know why. I'm assuming it's Dom, but I don't really know who Dom is either. She's cleaning the room and the phone starts ringing, and the man picks it up and he says, "No, Don, I don't want to eat. I am not hungry." I was like, okay, whatever. He already ate breakfast. She then left the room as it was, and then she came back with fresh towels. She knocked on the door, but this time she heard two voices, and a man with a deep voice asked who it was, and she said, "Housekeeping, I have towels for you." And the man said, "We're good, we don't need any towels," but they didn't have any towels in the room. Very strange. So the next morning,
let's talk about what happened to 3-year-old Kaylee Anthony. So Kaylee was born on August 9th of 2005, and she was living in Orlando, Florida. Her mother is Kaylee Anthony, and she had her at the age of 19. Kaylee was known as a big party girl, and her parents stated that when she first got pregnant, she actually hid the pregnancy until she literally couldn't. These are the grandparents of Kaylee, and these are obviously Kaylee's parents. So they all lived together in one house, and they basically raised Kaylee. On June 16th of 2008, Kaylee had an argument with her parents, so herself and Kaylee had left to go live with the nanny. This would actually be the last time that Kaylee was seen alive. For about a month, Kaylee's parents tried to get in contact with Kaylee to speak with Kaylee, and Kaylee would just make excuses on why they couldn't talk to her. So while her parents are here worried sick about Kaylee and where she is, Kaylee is just out partying, having a good time. On July 15th, the car that Kaylee was driving was actually a family car, and it actually had been impounded, so her father was notified that it was being impounded. So he went to go look at the car, and he noticed that there was a very weird smell coming from the car. Kaylee's mom tries to call Kaylee one more time to speak with Kaylee, and eventually she just ends up calling the police and telling them that Kaylee has been missing for about a month and she's worried about her, and she is informing them about Kaylee's car and this horrid smell that's coming from it. Police department end up investigating, and they're talking with Kaylee, and she just tells them that Kaylee disappeared after the day when she went with the nanny on June 9th. This was debunked as a lie because her parents stated that the last time that they saw Kaylee was actually June 15th. Kaylee ends up leading investigators to the apartment of the nanny, but they discover that that apartment has been vacant for a couple of months, so obviously they know she's lying. Kaylee is just lying and lying. She stated that she was working at Universal Studios, but she hadn't worked there for about 2 years. Investigators asked her why she didn't report her daughter missing, and she said it was because she was naive enough to think that she could do this on her own. Due to lying, she was charged the next day for child neglect and for giving false information. I'm running out of time, but stay tuned for part 2.
He was deliberately starved, so he weighed just 1.5 stones. He was regularly beaten, so his tiny body was covered in bruises. It was a head injury that eventually killed 4-year-old Daniel Pelka. Today, his mother, Magdalena Wuszak, and her partner, Mariusz Kreszelek, were both found guilty of his murder. This CCTV shows Magdalena collecting Daniel from school, but he isn't holding her hand. Circled in green, he's the one walking several metres behind. Hours later, he suffered a serious head injury. But his mother texted her boyfriend saying there was no point calling an ambulance. Instead, they Googled what to do when a child doesn't respond. Eventually, 2 days later, his mother called 999.
All right, what's the problem there? What's happening? Listen, my son, he stopped breathing. He got 4 years, yeah? And we wake up and he stopped breathing. He sent me.
Okay, what's he doing now? Is he breathing?
No, he's not breathing. Nothing.
Daniel was pronounced dead at hospital.
We're dealing with a 4-year-old little boy, and as they starved him, and as he became thinner and thinner, he became even more vulnerable, and he was beaten by grown adults.
In this house in northeast Coventry, the couple carried out a campaign of cruelty. While his siblings were well treated, Daniel was locked in a room just a few feet wide. This door was covered in his tiny fingerprints. The handle had been removed, so he couldn't escape.
There was no furniture other than some threadbare carpet and a very thin, it was heavily urine stained. It was pretty bleak, and it must have been a terrible existence. And we know that he spent a lot of time in that room.
Daniel was regularly subjected to a series of punishments. He was forced to kneel down in a corner for up to 20 minutes or made to do squats repeatedly, and he was force-fed salt, all because he was hungry and had taken some food. This footage shows him in a school corridor. Teachers saw him eating leftovers from the bins and taking food from other children's lunchboxes. The couple's text messages helped convict them. Wushak once wrote, "Well, now he's temporarily unconscious because I nearly drowned him." Throughout the trial, they blamed one another for Daniel's murder. We'll probably never know who inflicted the fatal blow or why this little boy was so cruelly treated. But both of them will now face justice.
Asha Degree was only 9 years old when she walked out of her Shelby, North Carolina home on Valentine's Day 2000. It wasn't the best night for a walk, especially for a 9-year-old girl at 3 a.m. Asha walked down Highway 18, a 2-lane county road surrounded by open fields and trees. She headed southbound towards Shelby and was spotted between 3:45 and 4:15 by a passing motorist and a truck driver. She wasn't hard to miss. Even in the stormy darkness, her long-sleeved white t-shirt and white pants stood out. The trucker kept moving but radioed to his fellow drivers, warning them about a little girl walking along the highway. Meanwhile, the motorist turned around and drove back to see if she was okay, but when he approached Asha, her stranger danger lessons kicked in and she ran into the woods. Her mother, Iquila's alarm went off around 5:45 a.m. Valentine's Day doubled as her and her husband Harold's wedding anniversary. But before they could celebrate, they had to get the kids ready for school. She drew the kids' bath and walked into their room to wake them, but Asha was gone. A few days later, several candy wrappers and some of Asha's personal items were found in a shed along the highway, less than 2 miles away, very close to the last place she was spotted. These items included her pencils, the marker, and her Mickey Mouse bow, which Iquila recognized as her daughter's. But they found something else strange in that shed, a wallet-sized photo of a little girl, but it wasn't Asha. In fact, no one in the area recognized her, not even the teachers at the elementary school. Maybe if they figured out what else Asha took with her, they might find a clue about where she was going. Iquila tore through her daughter's belongings and realized her favorite pieces of clothing were missing, including a pair of jeans with a decorative red stripe. Asha clearly didn't leave in a hurry. She had time to think about this, plan it even. She took her favorite clothes, enough to last a few days out in the world, but she didn't take her coat. We can't say for sure if the candy wrappers belonged to her, but it tracks for a 9-year-old thinking about how to feed herself. What made her disappearance even stranger is that she wasn't normally so independent. She had a brother named O'Brien who was only a year older than her, and they shared a bedroom in the family's small suburban home. Harold returned home from work a little after midnight. The first thing he did was check on the kids, who were sound asleep in their beds. It was a late night for him. He turned in sometime around 2:30. He checked on the kids one more time before finally hitting the sack. O'Brien woke up after his dad left the room and recalled hearing Asha roll over in bed. He didn't think much of it and just went back to sleep.
This is part 2 on what happened to 22-year-old Leslie Palacio and how her killer is still on the run. So the day after Leslie was reported missing, Eric's family also reported him missing along with his father Jose, which was odd because why is the dad also missing? You would think that the Rangel family would be joining the Palacio family to look for Eric, Leslie, and Jose, but no. They continue to be distant and cold towards the Palacio family. They also didn't want to talk to any reporters, and it seems like they didn't want to get the word out about Eric and Jose's disappearance. While the Palacio family was literally talking to the news, they were going on social media. I mean, they were doing whatever they could to bring awareness to Leslie's disappearance. After this, the Rangel family just kind of disappeared. Neighbors didn't see them go out anymore, so we're not sure if they moved or they just hid inside the house. Their behavior was just very odd, so police decided to ask the neighbors if they had any security footage that was pointing towards the Rangel house, and one of the neighbors did. The footage shows Eric and Leslie arriving to the Rangel home on August 29th at around 6:05 a.m. Eric takes Leslie out of the passenger seat and she just looks incapacitated. She could barely walk on her own. She literally had to lean on Eric in order to get inside the house. So they go inside the house at around 6:05 in the morning, and then an hour later at 7 a.m., Eric comes out of the house by himself. He tosses something small into his truck, gets inside, and then just drives away. He was alone at this moment, so where was Leslie? 15 minutes later, Eric goes back to the house, walks inside, and then walks out with his father Jose. In this time, the two of them are carrying and kind of dragging a body wrapped in a blanket. Police assume that this was the body of 22-year-old Leslie Palacio. Put the body into the passenger seat of the truck, Eric gets inside and then drives away. Jose stays back and he starts hosing off the driveway. After looking at this footage, police get a search warrant and they go inside the Rangel home. Inside the house, they found cleaning supplies and they also found drops of blood. There was just cleaning supplies everywhere, and it looked like someone had thoroughly cleaned the house. Even though there were drops of blood found in the house, to this day, police have not been able to confirm if that blood belonged to Leslie. At this point, police now know for sure that Eric and his father Jose are on the run. After further investigation, they discovered that one of their family members actually drove them across the San Isidro border in San Diego. So now the two of them were somewhere in Mexico. While police were on the hunt for Eric and Jose, they were also trying to find Leslie's body. And on September 9th, 2020, they finally found her. Her body was found not far from the road in the Valley of Fire. Since the desert was so hot, her body was heavily decomposed, so for this reason, they are not able to determine a cause of death. The hunt for Jose and Eric continued, and on January 19th, 2021, Jose was found. And he actually turned himself in at the San Isidro border in San Diego. Apparently, he turned himself in because he didn't want to be on the run anymore, but he says that he had no idea where Eric was. I don't have enough time, but go to part 3.
She said that she used to knock the baby out so she can go party. And she would put her to sleep, and then when she'll come back, the baby would still be asleep, and the next day she's awake. So that's how that came up.
Did she say what she used to knock her out?
I can't pronounce it. I can't pronounce it that well. Foam. I can't pronounce it. It's, I don't know much about it, but I know it's some type of chemical. It's chloroform. I can't pronounce it.
She said that?
Yeah.
What did she say? Tell me more about that.
I know that how she did it was she would pour it on like a rag, like a wash rag, and put it over the baby's face. So she'll inhale it, and that will knock her out.
On October 3rd, 2016, a man named James Rankin went for a hike, and he would make a very disturbing discovery. As he approached a clearing in the woods, he began to notice laminated missing persons posters duct taped to the trees. The closer he got to the clearing, the more and more missing persons posters he would find. These missing persons were from all over the country, and the flyers were in various states of decay, some looking like they'd been there for just a couple days, to weeks, to months. Some completely tattered like they'd been there for years. In the video James took, you can hear that he's obviously shaken and out of breath as he begins to describe how he came to find himself at this particular spot in the woods. But he cuts himself off, realizing that whoever did this might still be around, and he even says, "I gotta cut to the chase, I might die." And James' nervous behavior is not unwarranted. He draws his hunting knife as it seems he's just stumbled onto some kind of psychopathic shrine. As he makes his way further into the site, he kind of confirms his fears as he comes across some kind of makeshift shed or tent or something. A fire pit complete with log seating for multiple people, multiple sleeping bags on top of a tarp with emptied food cans strewn about. But creepiest of all, he comes across this. What appears at first to just be a bundle of sticks, he realizes they're lashed together at right angles. He says it appears like it's some kind of lean-to, like a survival shelter, or even a cage. Though it must have collapsed over time, he does point out that they were lashed together, and that this must have taken at least hours to build. Luckily, before he gets too close, he very perceptively picks up that there appears to be a deep pit dug right in the center of the cage. Although you can see that the pit has been filled in with leaves, something about this setup just screams booby traps to me. James begins to hear his voices and smartly decides to get out of there. And this is where the story gets even stranger. James uploaded the footage to YouTube, but he also contacted the local police department, and a detective he spoke with let him know that he would investigate the site and follow up with him. The video blew up. It went completely viral on Facebook. But when it did, a local homeowner who also owned land near this bizarre site actually reached out to police to complain about James trespassing on their land. And they excused everything that had been discovered on this property as Halloween decorations for a party they'd be throwing later that month. However, James made this discovery on October 3rd, and all signs pointed to everything that was there being at least months old. When questioned about this, the homeowner said, well, actually, we already threw the Halloween party in August. And to this, the police said, okay. And they declined to investigate the case any further, and it's unclear if anyone ever went to the site to investigate it at all. Which is frustrating because when you have a missing persons case, you want to investigate every lead. So comment and let me know what you think James discovered out there in the woods. And have you ever been to a Halloween party in August?